It was a cold Monday morning when 19-year-old Aarav stared at the ceiling yet again. Another week, another cycle of half-finished plans, YouTube binges, and silent guilt. His phone was full of productivity apps, his bookshelf looked impressive, but inside, he felt stuck. He wasn't lazy, he had dreams, big ones, but something inside him felt cluttered. His mind wasn't broken, but it wasn't performing like it should. Then one night, while scrolling, he stumbled upon a post. "Your mind is your greatest weapon. Sharpen it." It quoted a book, A High-Performing Mind by Andrew D. Thompson. He downloaded it instantly. What he didn't know was that book was about to change everything. Aarav's story begins where most of us are. Distracted, overwhelmed, and unfocused. In Chapter 1, the author introduces the idea of mental performance as a system. Andrew D. Thompson doesn't talk about more hacks or adding routines. He talks about calibrating the mind like a precision machine. High-performing minds aren't born, they're built, and they don't operate with clutter. Aarav read that and paused, because Thompson's first message is this: your brain is always on, but that doesn't mean it's always effective. Just like a high-performance athlete needs recovery, rhythm, and strategy, your mind needs intentional tuning. The first lesson: you don't need more energy. You need to stop the leaks. Mental leakage, that's what the book calls it. Every notification, every open browser tab, every anxious loop is a drip, drip, drip from your cognitive tank. And Aarav realized his problem wasn't motivation, it was mental noise. Thompson explains how the modern world has hijacked our attention economy, not by force, but by seduction. Focus is now a competitive edge. Those who master their mind master their day. Those who drift with distractions become tools in someone else's plan. Aarav read those lines twice. Then again, it wasn't about being busy, it was about being intentional. The next shift the book makes is powerful. It introduces a model called the 3 operating zones. Survival zone, where you react. You're stressed, distracted, running on fumes. Stability zone, where things feel fine. You manage your day, get things done. High performance zone, where you create, strategize, and thrive. Here's the catch. Most people live in zone 1 or 2 their whole life, bouncing between stress and autopilot. But the best minds? They design their days around zone 3. And Thompson teaches how to access it. The book says, a high-performing mind isn't always running at full speed, it's running in alignment. That line hit Aarav hard, because alignment is not about more hours, it's about matching your energy, focus, and priorities into a mental flow state. That's where deep work happens. That's where clarity lives. That's where growth starts. And so Aarav made a decision. He wasn't going to try harder, he was going to rebuild his system, not by chasing goals, but by becoming the kind of person whose mind was built to achieve them. He closed the chapter, took a breath. This was no longer about motivation, this was about mental engineering. And it was only the beginning. Part 2, Building the Foundation. The next morning, Aarav sat at his desk. No distractions, no noise, just him and the book. And Chapter 2 welcomed him with a powerful truth. Your environment is shaping your mind even when you think it's not. Thompson didn't just mean your room, he meant the people you listen to, the apps you open, even the invisible stressors around you. All of it was programming Aarav's mind like a computer running unnoticed software. He realized his cluttered room, his endless doom scrolling, even his casual negative conversations, they were part of the system pulling him away from a high-performing mind. The book lays out a simple formula: environment, input, mindset, output. In simple words, you can't expect peak performance if your surroundings are pulling you down every day. Aarav scribbled in his notebook, upgrade my environment equals upgrade my mind. And the first step Thompson recommended was so basic yet so profound. Create a mental gym, a sacred space, physical or digital, where your mind knows, here we perform. No clutter, no distractions, just clarity. Aarav looked around his room. He cleared his desk. He put away the junk. He deleted the noisy apps. He created his mental gym. It wasn't perfect, but it was intentional, and that made all the difference. Then came the second weapon Thompson taught him, strategic input. He said, you become what you consume. Feed your mind like an athlete feeds their body. Negative news, mindless entertainment, toxic conversations, these were mental junk food. Instead, high performers curate their inputs, books that stretch them, conversations that lift them, podcasts that spark ideas. It wasn't about being serious all the time, it was about being strategic. And Aarav made a promise to himself that day. He would stop feeding his mind garbage. Every scroll, every listen, every conversation, it would either nourish him or it wouldn't be part of his day. But it wasn't just about the external, it was about what Aarav was telling himself too. Because Thompson dives deep into the mindset reprogramming process, he reveals that many people are trapped not by reality, but by mental scripts they never chose consciously. Scripts like, I'm not disciplined, I'm just a procrastinator, I can't focus like others. Thompson writes, your mind believes the story you tell it most often. If you repeat limitation, you live limitation. If you repeat potential, you live expansion. Aarav sat there stunned because he realized he had been hypnotizing himself with the wrong story for years. So he started small, not fake affirmations, but evidence-based stories. Instead of saying, I'm bad at focus, he wrote, I'm becoming a master of focus, 1 hour at a time. Small shift, massive impact. And that's when Aarav noticed something strange. He didn't feel motivated, he felt empowered. He wasn't waiting for some magical day when he'd feel ready. He was building readiness brick by brick. Thompson's words echoed in his mind. High-performing minds don't rely on emotions to act. They act their way into new emotions. By the end of chapter 2, Aarav wasn't chasing some massive goal. He wasn't obsessed with results yet. He was simply falling in love with the process of upgrading his mind, one input, one decision, one belief at a time. And for the first time in years, he wasn't overwhelmed, he wasn't scattered, he wasn't lost, he was becoming. The shift wasn't loud, it was quiet, it was powerful, and it was only getting started. Part 3, The Power of Daily Systems. Aarav woke up the next morning feeling a tiny shift inside. Not a huge transformation, but a spark he hadn't felt in a long time. He picked up the book again, eager to learn the next secret, and Thompson delivered. Not with some motivational quote, but with a simple, powerful idea. Systems beat goals. For a moment, Aarav didn't understand. All his life, he thought success was about setting big goals, chasing dreams, writing down huge targets. But Thompson explained, goals are destinations. Systems are the vehicles that get you there. Without a strong system, a goal is just a wish. Aarav sat back and thought about it. How many times had he set goals? I'll start exercising. I'll study harder. I'll wake up early. And every time, he failed because he had no system, no small, repeatable actions, no blueprint to follow when motivation ran out. Thompson wrote it clearly. A high-performing mind doesn't trust feelings, it trusts systems. So Aarav made a decision that morning. Instead of setting huge, vague goals, he would build tiny, bulletproof systems. He followed Thompson's 3 golden rules for system design. Keep it small, start so small you can't fail. Example, read 2 pages, not a full chapter. Do 5 push-ups, not a full workout. Make it automatic. Attach the habit to something he already did, like reading 2 pages right after brushing his teeth. Track it. Visibly, use a simple calendar or notebook. Every small win gets a check mark, because what you track grows. Aarav scribbled in his notebook. Morning system equals wake up, brush teeth. Read 2 pages, stretch for 2 minutes. That was it. No crazy morning routine, no 2-hour meditation marathons, just tiny systems he could win every day. Thompson emphasized, momentum matters more than motivation. It wasn't about giant leaps, it was about stacking tiny wins day after day until they became unstoppable. But Aarav knew building new systems wasn't enough. He had old toxic habits that were silently killing his progress, and Thompson tackled this too. He called them friction points. If you want to stop a bad habit, add friction. If you want to start a good habit, remove friction. For Aarav, this meant simple changes like putting his phone across the room at night so he didn't scroll endlessly, keeping his book on his pillow so he had to touch it before sleeping, removing snack apps from his phone so late-night cravings became harder. Tiny changes, massive impact over time. As the days passed, Aarav felt something incredible happening. He wasn't just reading about change, he was living it. He wasn't fighting with motivation anymore. He wasn't battling guilt and failure every night. He was building a system that carried him, even on bad days, because Thompson taught him something priceless. Discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It's about making the right thing the easy thing. By the end of this section, Aarav wasn't thinking, will I succeed? He was thinking, how can I make success inevitable? And deep inside, for the first time ever, he believed he could. Part 4. Mental Conditioning and Handling Failure. The rains came early that month, gray skies, heavy winds, and a strange stillness in the air. Aarav sat by the window, sipping on cheap coffee, his thoughts drifting. Despite his systems, despite the early winds, that morning he slipped. He missed his stretch, skipped his reading, woke up late. Old guilt returned like a punch in the chest. I'm failing again, he whispered. I thought I changed. But as if Thompson had anticipated this, the next chapter of the book began with words that hit like a hug. A high-performing mind doesn't chase perfection, it builds resilience. Failure wasn't the end, it was the process. It was feedback. It was part of the growth. Thompson explained the science behind it. Every time you slip but come back, you rewire your brain for grit. Mental conditioning is not about avoiding failure, it's about choosing your response to it. Aarav leaned forward. This was new. He always believed failure meant weakness. But Thompson flipped that belief. He introduced the concept of the psychological immune system. Just like the body has an immune system to fight viruses, the mind can build defenses against fear, guilt, anxiety. And how do you build it? Not by running away, but by confronting discomfort again and again in tiny doses. Thompson called it controlled exposure. For Aarav, this meant doing things he avoided, sending that resume he kept delaying, speaking up during online classes, making uncomfortable phone calls. He started small, one tiny act of courage a day. And every time, his psychological immunity grew stronger, because Thompson reminded him, comfort is a silent killer. Growth lives outside the comfort zone. And then came the part that stayed with Aarav the longest, reframing failure. Most people fail and say, I'm not good enough. But a high-performing mind says, I haven't mastered it yet. That one word, yet, changed everything. It turned pain into potential, setbacks into setups, losses into lessons. Aarav recalled the night he froze during a college presentation. His voice had cracked. His hands trembled. People laughed. He had buried that memory, let it define him. But now he pulled it out, looked it in the eye, and whispered, that was just a rep. Just one set in the gym of growth. Thompson wrote, every time you get back up after failure, you teach your brain, I am safe, I am capable, I am evolving. So Aarav made a list. He called it his growth exposure plan. Each day, one small act that made him uncomfortable. Start a conversation with a stranger, share a thought on social media, ask for help when needed, not to prove anything to anyone, but to condition his mind, to build resilience, to rewire his response. Thompson concluded this chapter with a truth so simple yet so profound. A high-performing mind isn't fearless, it just learns to act despite fear. That line stayed with Aarav like a prayer, because he realized his battle was never with fear, failure, or people's opinions. His real battle was with the story he told himself. And now, that story was beginning to change. Part 5. Mastering Focus in a World That Wants to Break It. It was a Sunday afternoon. Aarav had blocked 2 hours to study. His notebook was ready, highlighters lined up, phone on silent. But 5 minutes in, his hand reached for his phone, just a quick scroll, a tiny dopamine hit, and suddenly, 45 minutes were gone, just like that. Guilt, frustration, the old voice returned, you can't stay focused, you'll never change. But Aarav took a deep breath and picked up the book again. Andrew D. Thompson had written an entire section on this, the attention economy. Your mind is your most valuable asset, but in today's world, everyone is trying to rent space in it. Notifications, likes, advertisements, trends, each one pulling at you, each one fighting for your attention. and the truth was clear. If you don't take control of your focus, someone else will. Thompson didn't just complain about the problem. He gave tools, simple, practical, powerful. He introduced focus blocks, time slots in the day reserved for deep, undistracted work. Rules were strict. No phone, no notifications, just one task. Set a timer. Start with 25 minutes. Aarav began with just one focus block per day. 25 minutes. That's it. At first it was hard. His brain resisted. His hands twitched for the phone. But slowly, something changed. He entered what Thompson called flow state. That magical zone where time fades, thoughts align, and work feels effortless. Aarav learned the 3 keys to reaching flow, straight from the book. Clarity. Know exactly what you're working on. No vagueness. Challenge. The task should stretch you, just enough to stay interesting. Consequence. There must be a reason to care, a result tied to the outcome. And then came another game changer, digital fasting. Just as your body needs rest from food, your brain needs rest from noise. Aarav started with 1 hour per day, phone off, no screens, just stillness. He'd go for a walk, journal, think. It felt weird at first, but then peaceful, silent, freeing. Thompson's words were sharp. Every time you give in to distraction, you're training your brain to be weak. But every time you resist, even for a few minutes, you're sharpening your mind, forging discipline, taking back control. Aarav created what he called his mental gym. Daily routines to train his focus. Morning, no phone for the first hour. Study, 1 25-minute focus block. Evening, 1 hour digital fast before bed. It wasn't perfect. Some days he failed. But slowly, he was winning the war, one battle at a time. And then came the deeper lesson from Thompson. Focus is not about working harder. It's about saying no louder. Saying no to constant multitasking. Saying no to reactive living. Saying no to things that don't move you forward. That night, Aarav sat in his room. No lights, no noise, just him, his thoughts, and a growing sense of power, not over others, but over himself. Part 6. Identity Shift. Becoming who you are meant to be. One evening, as Aarav closed his laptop after a deep focus session, he caught his reflection in the dark screen. He didn't recognize himself for a second, not because he looked different, but because he felt different inside. There was a calmness now, a strength, a quiet confidence he hadn't known before. And it hit him. Maybe success wasn't about working harder. Maybe it was about becoming someone new. Andrew D. Thompson introduced the concept of the identity shift. You don't achieve goals, you embody identities. A simple truth, you rise or fall to the level of who you believe you are, not what you wish for, not what you dream of, but who you see yourself as every single day. Thompson explained, most people chase habits, workouts, routines, to-do lists, but they never change how they view themselves. And so the change doesn't last, because deep down they're still stuck in the old story. I'm lazy. I'm not disciplined. I'm a procrastinator. The surface changes, but the roots stay the same. Aarav realized he had been doing the same thing all his life, trying to force new habits without changing his identity. And Thompson gave him the new path. Instead of setting behavior goals, set identity goals. Not, I will study 2 hours daily, but I am a committed learner. Not, I will exercise every day, but I am an athlete in training. Not, I will wake up early, but I am the kind of person who owns my mornings. Change the identity first. Behavior follows naturally because the mind doesn't like conflict. If you believe you are someone, you will act like it, automatically, effortlessly. Thompson introduced the 2-minute identity rule. Every day, perform a tiny action that confirms the new identity, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect. Want to be a reader? Read 1 page. Want to be a leader? Speak up once. Want to be fit? Do 1 push-up. The action doesn't matter. The message to the brain does, this is who I am now. Aarav made a list. I am a disciplined student. I am a fearless speaker. I am a builder of my future. And each day he did something, no matter how small, to prove it to himself. The victories were tiny, but inside a revolution was happening. and Thompson left him with one final truth for that chapter. Real transformation isn't about fighting the old you, it's about nurturing the new you. No more battling himself, no more feeling broken, no more guilt trips. From now on, Aarav was building, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was becoming. Part 7. Energy is your real currency. One rainy morning, Aarav sat at his desk, books open, coffee in hand, plans ready. But his brain felt heavy, his body ached, even simple tasks seemed overwhelming. He stared at his notebook, but no words came out. It wasn't a motivation problem, it wasn't a discipline problem, it was an energy problem. Andrew D. Thompson had warned about this. You don't run out of time, you run out of energy. Time management wasn't the real key to success, energy management was. Because no matter how perfectly you planned your day, if your mind was exhausted, your plans meant nothing. Thompson introduced the 4 energies of a high-performing mind. Physical energy, your body's strength, sleep, exercise, nutrition. Emotional energy, your mood, joy, gratitude, love or frustration, anger, fear. Mental energy, your ability to focus, think clearly, solve problems. Spiritual energy, your sense of meaning. Knowing your why, Aarav realized. He had been ignoring all of them, pulling all-nighters, living on junk food, burying emotions, working without a sense of deeper purpose, and it was draining him dry. Thompson offered practical strategies to refill the tank. For physical energy, sleep 7 to 8 hours, no compromise. Move your body daily, hydrate and fuel your body with real food. For emotional energy, practice gratitude each morning, forgive yourself for mistakes, surround yourself with uplifting people. For mental energy, focus on one major task per session, take short breaks after deep work, protect your mind from junk input. For spiritual energy, reconnect with your deeper why, reflect on what truly matters beyond success, serve something bigger than yourself. One line from Thompson hit Aarav deep inside. High performance is not about pushing harder, it's about recovering smarter. Rest was not a luxury, it was a discipline, an essential pillar of excellence. Aarav redesigned his entire schedule. Morning, 10 minutes of gratitude journaling. Midday, a brisk walk to refresh his body and mind. Evening, reading something inspiring before bed, not scrolling. Night, no work past 9 p.m. Rest was sacred, slowly. The heavy fog lifted. His mind felt sharper, his body felt lighter, his emotions felt steadier. He wasn't just managing time anymore. He was mastering energy. And then came one of Thompson's boldest truths. Protect your energy the way a warrior protects his sword. Without it, you are defenseless in the battles of life. Aarav smiled that night as he closed his journal, because for the first time in years, he didn't feel exhausted. He felt ready to face tomorrow, ready to conquer the battles ahead, not by force, but by flow. Part 7. Energy is your real currency. One rainy morning, Aarav sat at his desk, books open, coffee in hand, plans ready. But his brain felt heavy, his body ached, even simple tasks seemed overwhelming. He stared at his notebook, but no words came out. It wasn't a motivation problem, it wasn't a discipline problem, it was an energy problem. Andrew D. Thompson had warned about this. You don't run out of time, you run out of energy. Time management wasn't the real key to success, energy management was. Because no matter how perfectly you planned your day, if your mind was exhausted, your plans meant nothing. Thompson introduced the 4 energies of a high-performing mind. Physical energy, your body's strength, sleep, exercise, nutrition. Emotional energy, your mood, joy, gratitude, love or frustration, anger, fear. Mental energy, your ability to focus, think clearly, solve problems. Spiritual energy, your sense of meaning. Knowing your why, Aarav realized. He had been ignoring all of them, pulling all-nighters, living on junk food, burying emotions, working without a sense of deeper purpose, and it was draining him dry. Thompson offered practical strategies to refill the tank. For physical energy, sleep 7 to 8 hours, no compromise. Move your body daily, hydrate and fuel your body with real food. For emotional energy, practice gratitude each morning, forgive yourself for mistakes, surround yourself with uplifting people. For mental energy, focus on one major task per session, take short breaks after deep work, protect your mind from junk input. For spiritual energy, reconnect with your deeper why, reflect on what truly matters beyond success, serve something bigger than yourself. One line from Thompson hit Aarav deep inside. High performance is not about pushing harder, it's about recovering smarter. Rest was not a luxury, it was a discipline, an essential pillar of excellence. Aarav redesigned his entire schedule. Morning, 10 minutes of gratitude journaling. Midday, a brisk walk to refresh his body and mind. Evening, reading something inspiring before bed, not scrolling. Night, no work past 9 p.m. Rest was sacred, slowly. The heavy fog lifted. His mind felt sharper, his body felt lighter, his emotions felt steadier. He wasn't just managing time anymore. He was mastering energy. And then came one of Thompson's boldest truths. Protect your energy the way a warrior protects his sword. Without it, you are defenseless in the battles of life. Aarav smiled that night as he closed his journal, because for the first time in years, he didn't feel exhausted. He felt ready to face tomorrow, ready to conquer the battles ahead, not by force, but by flow. Part 8. Designing your environment for automatic success. One afternoon, Aarav sat back and looked around his room. Papers were everywhere. The desk was cluttered. Notifications constantly buzzed from his phone. His study space felt chaotic, and suddenly he understood why his mind felt the same. Andrew D. Thompson had a simple, powerful lesson. Your environment always wins. Not sometimes, always. You might have the best intentions, the strongest willpower, the most detailed plans, but if your environment works against you, you will lose every time. Thompson taught that high performers don't rely on discipline. They design their spaces for success. They make good habits easy, bad habits hard. They don't fight temptations, they remove them. Aarav got to work. First, Thompson's rule: out of sight, out of mind. He hid his phone in another room during study hours. He deleted distracting apps. He removed junk snacks from his desk. He placed his most important book, notebook, and pen right in front of him. Now, when Aarav sat down, the only option in front of him was the work that mattered. Next came trigger design. Thompson explained, you can create simple triggers that remind you of your best self. Aarav set his laptop wallpaper to his personal motto, one step closer today. He placed a sticky note on his desk, act like the person you want to become. He set a gentle chime at 5 p.m. each day, a reminder to review the day's wins. The environment wasn't passive anymore, it was active. It was pushing him forward, quietly, powerfully. And Thompson emphasized energy zones. Don't mix spaces, create zones for energy, focus, and rest. So Aarav redesigned his room. His desk was for work only. His bed was for sleep and relaxation. A small corner with a chair became his reading nook. No more lying on the bed with a laptop, no more eating while studying, no more blurring the lines. Each space now told his brain exactly what to do. One final concept from Thompson sealed the transformation. Make excellence the path of least resistance. Success wasn't about endless motivation. It was about removing friction. It was about making the right choice, the easy choice. Weeks later, Aarav noticed something strange. He no longer had to force himself to start studying. He no longer battled constant distractions. He no longer felt drained by simple tasks. It felt natural. It felt effortless. It felt like breathing. Because the environment was now his silent partner in greatness. That night, as Aarav walked into his clean, inspiring room, he smiled with pride. He realized he wasn't just building a life anymore. He was building a world around him that made success inevitable. A world where he didn't have to fight his old self. A world where his future self was already winning. Part 9. The Long Game. Patience as a Superpower. Aarav sat in his favorite reading nook one afternoon, the sun streaming through the window, casting warm light on his journal. His mind was clearer than it had been in months. His energy was stable. His environment was aligned with his goals. Yet there was still something inside him that felt impatient. Aarav had always been an achiever. He wanted quick results. He was used to immediate feedback, a test score, a project deadline, a milestone. But success, true high performance, wasn't about hitting small targets. It was about building something that lasted, and that took time. Andrew D. Thompson had warned about this. The people who win the long game are the ones who realize that success isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. It wasn't about short-term hustles. It wasn't about burning out for a quick win. It was about building sustainable excellence. The process, the daily practice, the consistency. Aarav's previous rush for success was slowly giving way to a new realization. He read Thompson's powerful reminder. Patience is the ultimate form of confidence. If you know where you're going, you don't need to rush. The right things will come at the right time. He remembered the story of the bamboo tree. You plant the seed, water it, nurture it. But for the first few years, there's no visible growth. The roots are building deep underground. Only after a few years does the bamboo shoot up, growing as much as 80 feet in just a few weeks. Aarav had been that bamboo tree. For a while, it felt like nothing was changing, like his efforts were invisible. But deep inside, he knew things were shifting. He was laying the foundation. He was building roots. Thompson's idea of the long game hit Aarav hard. Don't sacrifice tomorrow for the rush of today. Slow and steady doesn't just win the race, it builds something that lasts. As the weeks went on, Aarav learned to embrace patience. He wasn't measuring his success in quick wins anymore. He was measuring it in daily progress, in consistency, in small habits that built a massive foundation over time. And suddenly, his impatience didn't feel like a weakness anymore. It felt like an invitation to slow down, to trust the process, and to give each step the time it deserved. Aarav began to feel a quiet confidence, a deep knowing that he didn't need to rush his dreams. He knew the path he was on. He trusted that it would unfold in due time. And with that trust, he felt a peace he hadn't known before. Patience became his superpower. Part 10, The Power of Resilience. Embracing setbacks. One cold evening, Aarav faced something he hadn't anticipated, an unexpected setback. His latest project, one that he'd poured his heart and soul into, had failed. The deadline was missed. The results were underwhelming. For a moment, he sat there, staring at the screen, his mind swirling with frustration. He felt like a failure. But then, something shifted. A voice in his head, calm and steady, reminded him of a powerful lesson from Andrew D. Thompson. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of it. Thompson had explained that the most successful people didn't fear failure. They didn't avoid it. They embraced it. Because setbacks weren't a sign that they weren't good enough. They were a signal that growth was happening. Aarav remembered reading about the concept of resilience, the ability to bounce back stronger after each fall. Resilience wasn't about avoiding adversity. It was about learning from it, growing through it, and using it to fuel future success. Thompson had broken it down into clear steps. Acknowledge your emotions. Aarav felt angry, upset, and disappointed. It was okay to feel those things, but he couldn't stay there. Acknowledging his feelings was the first step to moving past them. Reframe the failure. Instead of seeing it as a defeat, Aarav began to ask, what can I learn from this? He wrote down his mistakes and took full responsibility, but without judgment. Every failure was a lesson in disguise. Pivot and take action. Resilience wasn't just about feeling strong in the face of failure. It was about doing something about it. Aarav came up with a new plan. He adjusted his strategy and took immediate action. The setback didn't define him, his response to it did. Aarav realized resilience wasn't a trait you were born with. It was a skill you developed over time. It was forged in the fire of difficulty, tested in the moments when everything seemed lost. And with each failure, Aarav felt himself becoming more resilient, more grounded, more certain that the path forward wasn't linear. But it was always moving toward growth. Thompson had written, resilience isn't the absence of hardship. It's the capacity to turn hardship into strength. The next time Aarav faced a setback, he didn't panic. He didn't drown in self-doubt. Instead, he embraced it, turned it around, and used it as fuel for the next step. With time, the setbacks didn't feel like walls anymore. They felt like obstacles that built his strength. Each challenge, each failure was a piece of the puzzle. a step closer to his best self. Aarav smiled, standing tall in the face of it all, because now he knew it wasn't about avoiding failure, it was about using it to power up. And no setback could stop him, only propel him forward. Part 11. Cultivating deep focus. Performing at your peak every day. One morning, Aarav woke up before the sun. He had a new sense of purpose. His journey, though long and filled with ups and downs, was starting to feel complete. But there was one thing left to master, a concept that Andrew D. Thompson had emphasized over and over again. Deep focus. In the chaos of daily life, it was easy to be distracted. Aarav knew that. He'd been pulled in 1,000 different directions. But Thompson's lesson on focus struck Aarav hard. High performers don't just work hard, they work smart. They focus on what truly matters. Aarav thought about his distractions, the constant notifications, the multitasking, the noise from his phone, his social media accounts, the world outside his room. He realized he couldn't keep performing at his best with all this noise. Thompson's answer was simple. Deep work. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. Aarav thought about what that meant. It meant no checking emails every few minutes. It meant no switching from one task to another every 5 minutes. It meant no multitasking. Aarav set his first goal, to focus for 90 minutes straight with no interruptions, no phone, no noise, just pure, uninterrupted work. The first few attempts were hard. His mind wandered. The urge to check his phone was strong. But he pushed through. He realized that deep work wasn't a skill you mastered overnight. It was a muscle, and like any muscle, it had to be trained. Thompson had recommended a routine for cultivating deep focus. 1. Time blocking. Each day, Aarav would carve out specific blocks of time for deep work, and nothing else during that time. 2. Single tasking. He would focus on one task at a time, removing the temptation to multitask, which only slowed him down. 3. Batching shallow work. Aarav would set a specific time for shallow tasks like checking emails or browsing the web, and then forget about them for the rest of the day. Over time, Aarav noticed a huge shift. He was working smarter, not harder. His output skyrocketed, and he felt a deep sense of satisfaction at the end of each day. Deep work didn't just improve his productivity, it improved the quality of his work, and it gave him the mental space to solve bigger problems. Thompson had explained, the highest performers are those who can carve out large blocks of time to focus on the things that matter most. It's not about being busy, it's about being effective. Aarav learned to respect his deep work time, guarding it like a precious resource. And as he did, he noticed that the more deeply he worked, the more present and connected he felt with his own goals. It was no longer about rushing through tasks, it was about quality and precision. That afternoon, as Aarav sat down to his deep work session, he smiled. Because this was the secret. This was how the highest performers did it. It was a commitment to working with intention, to slowing down and focusing on what truly mattered. And in that focus, success became inevitable. Part 12. Integrating everything, building a sustainable routine for success. Aarav had come a long way, from a young man overwhelmed by distractions and self-doubt, to a focused, resilient high performer who embraced setbacks and growth. But there was one final piece to the puzzle. He needed to integrate everything he had learned into a sustainable routine, a routine that would carry him through each day without burning out, without losing sight of his goals. Aarav sat at his desk early one morning, his journal open in front of him. He'd been thinking deeply about his next step. Andrew D. Thompson's final message to him was clear. Success doesn't come from sudden bursts of productivity. It comes from the consistent practice of the right habits, day after day. The more Aarav reflected, the more he realized that building a high-performing mind wasn't a one-time event. It wasn't about working intensely for a few weeks or months and then taking a break. It was about creating a sustainable routine that kept him at his best day after day, month after month, year after year. Thompson had broken it down into a few simple, powerful principles. Start with your why. Aarav had discovered his deeper purpose. He understood why he was pursuing his goals, and it wasn't just about success for success's sake. It was about becoming the best version of himself, making an impact, and creating something meaningful. Prioritize your health. Success didn't mean sacrificing physical health. Aarav made sure to integrate physical activity into his daily routine. A morning workout, a walk during lunch, regular stretches. Health was his foundation. Without it, everything else would crumble. Set non-negotiables. Aarav began structuring his day around his highest priorities, and everything else was secondary. His deep work time was sacred. His morning routine was non-negotiable. His time with family and friends was precious. He had learned to say no to distractions and yes to what mattered most. Track your progress. One of the most powerful tools Aarav used was tracking. He kept a journal to record his habits, his successes, his struggles. Every week, he would review his progress, adjust his goals, and fine-tune his approach. Progress wasn't just about outcomes, it was about refining his methods. Embrace the growth mindset. Aarav never stopped learning. He read books, attended seminars, and practiced new skills. Every experience was an opportunity to grow. He kept challenging himself to become better, to reach new heights, and to push past his comfort zone. As Aarav continued building this routine, he started seeing the results, not just in his work, but in his life. His relationships were stronger, his health was thriving, and his sense of purpose had never been clearer. One evening, as Aarav reflected on his journey, he thought back to the young man he had once been, the anxious, impatient, distracted boy who struggled to focus and was afraid of failure. He smiled, because the man he had become was someone who embraced the process, someone who knew that high performance wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up every day, committed to growth, and building something sustainable. Aarav now understood the power of a high-performing mind. It wasn't just about achievement, it was about living with intention, about aligning every action with a deeper purpose, and about knowing that success, real success, was a long-term journey, not a destination. A high-performing mind wasn't just a book to Aarav, it was a blueprint for his life. A blueprint he would continue to follow day after day, year after year. And with every step, he knew he was becoming the best version of himself.